everybody, it's Drybear. A new week has started in the First Descendant, which means we have new reactors spawning all over the world map. So today we're gonna go through the best ones that you don't want to miss. Apologies for the flashbang, but these are the best in slot of the reactors that are available this week. We went through this on stream, but going through all the reactors that are available, these are the ones that would be useful for specific builds or have the correct combination of element, ammo type, and ability type that you'll want to be aware of. And I have an image for this list down below in the comments and the description if you just wanted to grab this information, and then the best missions that you could run in those zones to get those drops regularly. Starting with Viessa, we'll go character by character. Viessa actually has some nice reactors available this week for various different builds. Kingston Grand Square has a chill special rounds tech build, and this is actually for a very specific Viessa focused build, which revolves around using the Blizzard in a non-augmented style. So not absolute zero, no singular on that. If you're using OG like Infinite Blizzard Viessa with tech, you will want to use a chill reactor with special rounds. In this case, you won't want to drop a clairvoyance on this because it will give you a little bit of chill power increase by reducing the target's resistance to chill overall. And in this region, my favorite mission to run for this is Kingston Surveillance Radar. You can also run the reactor over here. It's a lot slower for drops, but it will give you some nice carbon activators as well if you want to farm that up. But I do like running Kingston Surveillance Radar for that specific build for Viessa. Additionally, in Echo Swamp Abandoned Zone, there is a chill special rounds fusion reactor this week. This is great for a cold snap watch Viessa build. This is actually a build that has been popping up over the last couple weeks that's great for AoE farming and mission farming as well. So if you wanted to farm up one of those, you would probably run a clairvoyance on this as well. Chill clairvoyance fusion and get some stats up for your cold snap watch Viessa. Super powerful. And of course, any of the other options that don't include the ability type or focused on the Blizzard can give you a lot of options for this damage scaling too. And for Echo Swamp Abandoned Zone, I think the only option here really is the Environment Contamination Zone. This is a very popular gold farm and codebreaker farm for most people in the game, which means most of the time when you go into a public lobby, you're going to find people here already farming this, and it does drop a large amount of items. Alternatively, you can go over and do like Abandoned Zone on this side of the zone. It's not the best in the world, but it does give you some decent drops here. But again, this is going to be so popping on this side for Environment Contamination. I think this is going to be the best spot for farming it. Next in Ogden Desert for the storage, there is a chill impact singular reactor for Viessa. If you want to run absolute zero, that modifies all of her abilities to be singular. And you can also run impact rounds with the Blue Beetle, which gives you skill crit, which is pretty decent on Viessa as well. So you would run a chill Blue Beetle mounted singular. You could also run Wave of Light or Nazastras if you wanted a more well-rounded, less skill-focused reactor for absolute zero Viessa. And the best mission to run here is going to be previous construct team quarters. You can also run the outpost and then go over to the reactor and just do that back and forth while the outpost is respawning, because the reactor here is very close to the outpost. And in case you get materials, you can go back. You just need organic void shards to open these repeatedly, but both of these will drop the reactors, so you can just kind of go back and forth since they're so close together in this specific region. Let's continue talking about chill reactors by jumping into Hailey builds. There is actually going to be two options for the sniper Hailey build this week as well, and some hailstorm Hailey, the mobbing Hailey build, if you're looking for that as well. Same place, the storage has a chill impact singular. This is good for the absolute zero Viessa build, but it also is good for the perforator option of the sniper Hailey build, the Snowpiercer Hailey, where you run a perforator with a payout mod instead of running with the piercing light. I still think piercing light is going to be more damage option for you, but it is a very competitive side grade that you can run if you want to have a very easy option. And the perforator build version doesn't need as much investment in the weapon as the piercing light variant does for the high power rounds. And again, for this specific reactor, you're running previous construct team quarters for the highest drop rate, or just running outpost into the reactor over and over and over. Next, there is a hailstorm Hailey or the mobbing Hailey build available in shipment base. This is chill special rounds Dimension. Dimension is Hailey's mobbing build using her passive as well as her one ability. Hopefully in a couple weeks when we get the Hailey Transcendent mods, we get even more options for mobbing Hailey as a build, but this is where you'd want to select that and get it, and most likely you would run a clairvoyance here. Most of the special round weapons are good. You can run Kingsguard now, you can run Secret Garden, but clairvoyance has the most synergy with a mobbing Hailey setup. And for shipment base, I recommend running Fortress Outskirts. This one is the one where you can set up 4 stand in place like capture points that are active at the same time, and you can run around our outskirts destroying mobs. This is a very high mob count, very high drop rate, super easy for farming reactors. Lastly, for Hailey, there is a best in slot option for the sniper. We didn't have one last week, but we had one 2 weeks ago if you're looking for the piercing light / afterglow variant of the sniper Hailey build. This is chill, high power, singular, which is Hailey's big blast, as well as her zenith or ultimate where she locks down into sniper mode. This one is very easy to pick up. My best in slot is going to be piercing light. Piercing light is about 8 to 12% better for this specific build than afterglow sword, and I think in most cases when fully maxed out is going to be a little bit better than the perforator variant, but again it is more expensive and requires more investment than the perforator option. And if you're looking for this, is going to be Ironworks Sterile Land. And for farming in this area, I think you want to go Ironworks to weapon processing facility, a very small area in 2 different rooms in this facility. You can farm over and over, great drops. It's a very short mission, so run this over and over to get that Hailey reactor this week. Next up is the fan favorite bunny, the one everyone loves or loves to hate. There are 2 or 3 reactors you could run this week. It's not, last week we had the Thunder Cage General Rounds singular farming reactor, which is your best in slot for a farming bunny. We don't have the same option this week, but there are some really good options for bunny this time around. In Sterile Land restricted zone area, there is an electric impact round singular. Singular is it works on her 3. It's her AoE build that uses for, like most bunnies will use singular. There are fusion build options that we'll talk about in a second, but this is your primary AoE farming build. Now, general rounds, Thunder Cage is like the most common reactor that we'll see for farming bunnies, but impact rounds is great because you can run Blue Beetle, which gives you skill crit. It's not a huge increase, but there is synergy there. Or you could run the brand new Wave of Light, which has a very strong single target. So you could run an electric Wave of Light singular reactor for bunny for farming, use your abilities to clear AoE, and then use the Wave of Light to take out a single target. You could even run Disaster's Devotion if you really wanted to. Then for restricted zone, a lot of the missions here are pretty lame. They're not super valuable in farm rate, but you get what you can take in this specifically. Of all of these, my favorite is actually the barracks, just because it's a little bit easier, more stand in place. Some of these have specific, like the defense missions, and some of these are kind of annoying because the mechanics you have to do to farm them. They will all drop the reactor you're looking for, but I would recommend doing the barracks out of these. Next, there is a kind of an off-meta build for bunny that I like running personally. This is Fallen Arc. There is in Fortress, there is an electric high-power fusion reactor for bunny. I like this. Is actually the build that I run on my bunny, which is I run fusion for electric condense, which makes your big explosion better, and it makes your stomp AoE better as well. Your 3 will remain unaffected by your reactor unless you have stats down below on the additive, but it gives you a lot of big burst damage, which is great for mobs like elite mobs or champion mobs that have more HP. And then I like running high power on this because I run a fully upgraded afterglow sword. This is actually the build that I use for invasions as well, because the AoE is plenty enough on its own. You lower the damage of your singular, but you still get enough damage to clear mobs, and then you use electric condense plus your afterglow sword to take out any single target that's in your way, rather than running high voltage with a singular build. And it's a build that I personally prefer, and you can find this in Fallen Arc for bunny. I would recommend afterglow sword for the mount. Afterglow, if you're wondering the difference between afterglow sword and piercing light has better base stats. Afterglow sword is much better when it's fully upgraded and maxed out with all modules, so it's more of an end game option. Piercing light is better out of the box, so to say. Then for mission on Fallen Arc, I would farm Frozen Shipyard in the middle here. It is very easy, a lot of good mob density you can get for reactor drops there. Next, if you wanted to run the same kind of fusion electric condense build for bunny, but you want to run it with impact rounds, you can run this with Blue Beetle, Disaster's Devotion, or the new Wave of Light. Blue Beetle would give you more skill crit, which is nice, but Wave of Light and Disasters would be good at killing single targets. So if you wanted to run that variant, that is available at Mirage Stone. And for Mirage Stone, I would definitely recommend Commanding Ground. Not only are you going to get a lot of really great important purple material drops here, but it also has a high drop rate, and it's one of those stand in place giant area missions where you don't have to go anywhere. There's just mobs everywhere. Very easy to farm this week. Moving on to Sharen. Sharen has 2 reactors this week. Generally, reactors don't matter too much on Sharen, just because her strongest build is either the Shred Corrosion Sharen build, which doesn't really need a specific reactor, or the Spine Shatter Sniper Sharen build, which again doesn't need a specific reactor. But if you are playing like Blade Sharen Sharen or her ultimate with the blades that fly out and do single target, then you have some options here this week. And they're actually the same as the electric condense build bunny option, which is going to be Fallen Arc, Fortress, the high power rounds. Again, this one is excellent for just running like Afterglow Sword, getting some extra sniper shots in there. You can even run this on Spine Shatter plus another variant if you really wanted to, because the fusion electric doesn't matter and the high power rounds is all you're really looking for. And again, for that reactor, you would farm Frozen Shipyard inside of Fallen Arc. And the other option, if you wanted to run like Wave of Light with Sharen, or you could even run like Blue Beetle for the skill crit. You get that in Mirage Stone this week, Electric Impact Fusion rounds. And again, in Mirage Stone, you definitely want to be running Commanding Ground as the mission option. Next up this week is Esiemo. There's one Esiemo reactor. He usually has like 2 to 3 reactors every single week that you can run. Then the reactor that you can get for Esiemo this week is a little off meta. Technically, you wouldn't really run like Fusion Esiemo isn't as popular as his other alternative option just for AoE, but I do think Fusion Esiemo has some really nice synergies, and I would love to see people run that build a lot more than we see currently. And that is going to be Sterile Land, Rockfall, Fire, Special Rounds, Fusion in this case. Now, for the Fusion Esiemo, it does work on the detonation of your bombs. If your landmines blow up on their own, the Fusion won't scale on it, but if you detonate them manually with your second ability, the Fusion will scale the explosion damage that those deal. And Fusion also affects Esiemo's big AoE ultimate that he does. He runs up and explodes. So that's where the Fusion build comes from. And in that case, you're probably best off doing a Secret Garden mount for that. But you also could run like a Fusion Esiemo with the new Kingsguard Lance and be able to do a very wide spread of activities with a lot of really good damage. And in Sterile Land Rockfall, there's no reason not to run Anticipated Ambush Point. This is one of the better gold farms in the game, and it is currently the best place to find code breakers to open vaults with in this zone, and it's a very fast mission, properly managed with very good farming builds. You can finish this mission in like 45 to 70 seconds. It's very fast. You get a very high drop rate of code breakers and a decent amount of gold while you're doing it as well, and I think if you're in this area farming, there's no reason not to run Anticipated Ambush Point. Next, there is usually a whole bunch of Blair reactors every single week, but for some reason, we only have one place that has a good Blair reactor this time around, so a little bit less than he's used to, but he's like the only Dimension Fire character, so he ends up having lots of options every week, and his build doesn't require a specific weapon, so the ammo type is less specific, but in this case, there is one Dimension reactor that is very good for Blair this week. Which is going to be here, Vespers, Law Supply Depot, Fire, Impact, Dimension is a great build for Blair. I think one of the best ways to run Blair right now is with Fire, Nazestra's Devotion, and Dimension. Dimension means that he can run all of his fire abilities and do tons of AoE, and Nazestra's is fast, it's flexible, allows him to move a lot, because with Blair you want to position properly all the time, so having that extra movement from a hand cannon is great, and it also has excellent single target with Defense Shred, which works great for Blair as well, so you have that option there. Law Supply Depot in Vespers. Now in Law Supply Depot, this is one of the more popular outposts in the game, and this is definitely one of the more popular void fragments, so if you're farming in this zone, you will actually find a lot of people farming this outpost and then going over the fragment and doing it back and forth, that sort of thing. Very easy to pick that up and just join in on groups that are already doing this, and you'll get reactors that are farming that way. If you want to solo farm, I recommend running the Abandoned Village mission. This one is, it's the place that you go to as part of the Void Experiment special operation, but when you come into this, enemies will continually spawn until about the 2:30-minute mark, as long as you don't finish collecting all of the genetic codes. So if you don't collect genetic codes and you just farm until on the timer it says 2 minutes and 30 seconds, you will have infinite spawns. Then when you hit 2:30, collect all the genetic codes and reset the mission, and you have a very high drop rate of reactors on this as well. But again, you can also just join the groups that are doing these outposts all the time. There is only one Lepic reactor this week, and luckily it is for the meta build, the Mega Man build for Lepic, focused on tech and impact rounds. So you'll be able to build that build this week. So if you're looking for a Mega Man bossing Lepic build, there's a best in slot reactor this week. So for the Mega Man build specifically, it scales off of tech damage for his ultimate with his arm transformation, and it's fire on top of that. And the reason why best in slot for impact is what most people like is the Sharp Precision Shot variant mod for impact rounds has a higher impact, higher result on his arm ability, his unique weapon, than other round types. types. So Fire Impact Tech is the one you want for Mega Man Lepic, and it drops in Derelict Covert Echoed Swamp. Now, Derelict Covert, this is one of the better outposts to do, and this outpost does drop macro molecules, which is good for crafting your crystallization catalyst. So actually running this outpost isn't too bad. It's not going to be super high drop rate for the actual reactors this week, but you do have to farm this regularly anyway, so it's an option for you. And then out of all of these missions, I think all four of these missions are pretty meh. The one at the top is okay, but the one I recommend for this is going to be Verdant Greenery. This one is actually very short, lots of spawn. You clear it out, you reset it, you do it again. It's kind of a short mission, but it does have a good density of mobs. It's pretty decent, so I recommend Verdant Greenery if you're not going to be farming the outpost for that specifically. There is one reactor for Enzo this week. Usually he doesn't have a specific reactor that he needs, but if you wanted to run like a mixed ability or burst damage Enzo, there is an option for you this week. And for that, you want to run the Remnant area in Ogna Desert this week, non-attribute general rounds singular for Enzo. You'll want to get an Enduring Legacy on this one. If you really wanted to, you could run other general rounds, but Enduring Legacy works perfectly for him if you're looking for a singular damage Enzo build with non-attribute. Inside of Remnant, you have two options for missions, and I would take the north one, the Abandoned Reconstruction Site. This is far more efficient for clearing and farming for mobs. There is actually one reactor this week for Yujin. He doesn't have like required reactors as much as other Descendants. You can run a lot of different options. It depends on how you're running Yujin, how you're running the builds, if you're doing like a synergy Yujin, a healing Yujin, or some kind of combination. But there is one reactor, and it's actually the same reactor we just talked about for Enzo, which again is in Remnant Ogna Desert, non-attribute general rounds singular. And inside of this area, again, I would recommend Abandoned Reconstruction Site if you're farming for a Yujin reactor. There's actually one reactor for Ajax this week. It's for his Jumping Jacks AoE build. You can run tank Ajax with almost any reactor, but in this case, when you want the non-attribute tech scaling for his Jumping Jacks or his AoE explosion builds, you'll want to run the reactor that's available for him this week. And that's going to be available in White Knight Gulch Moongrave Basin. It's a non-attribute special rounds tech, and in this case, I would highly recommend that you get a Secret Garden drop for the mount on this reactor specifically. Super good for Ajax. If you're running for that Jumping Jacks or the AoE build, this is the one you're going to want to run for. And inside Moongrave Basin, a lot of these missions are actually quite similar in value. You can actually get some pretty close points between all four of them, to be honest with you. But I think the best and most enjoyable farm is going to come from the Water Cooling Recording Device mission. This mission has two sites, an A site and a B site, like we're playing Counter-Strike. And what you can do is you can go to the B site, farm it until all the mobs start disappearing, they don't spawn anymore, and then reset the mission. It has a high density, good area, there's no water in that spot, so Water Cooling Recording Device is great for that farm. This week, there's only one reactor that's good for Gley in general, and it's not your typical like Massacre, Sanguination build that you run for Gley. This one is actually for what I call the Snap Gley, which is her crunch, where she kind of like crunches like that and does the non-attribute explosion AoE. It's actually it's not as popular as some of her other builds because it's not a weapons platform Gley, but it's actually incredibly strong and does a lot of damage and gets some serious range on it as well. So if you wanted to do the Snap Gley or the Crunch Gley build, there's a reactor for that this week. And that's going to be in White Knight Gulch Observatory. In this area, there will be a non-attribute impact round Dimension, which is going to be her snap version. And in this case, you want to run a Peacemaker as the mount because it allows her to build up more non-attribute damage. She already has Dimension, so she can stack up the Peacemaker, get some burst damage out of it. Very cool build, a little bit non-meta, but very strong, and it's a build that I'd like to see more people running as well. And in Observatory, a lot of these missions are pretty good, actually. You can run some of these missions up here, like Eye of Truth is actually pretty decent. The cave one with Occupied Facility is pretty decent, but the one that I like the most is actually going to be Order's Veil down here in Observatory, and just because it's one of those big cylinders, stand in place, don't go anywhere, no objectives to do, you just kill mobs over and over and over, and I tend to prefer those if they're an option, because I can kind of just turn my brain off, watch something while I'm farming the best in slot reactor. Next, for all the Kyle mains out there, there's two reactors depending on which build you're trying to run for. There's one for his like big explosion reflectory build if you want to run that. There's also a reactor for his shoulder tackle burst build if you wanted to run that as well. In the Ogna Desert mining site, there's a non-attribute special rounds Dimension build if you want to run this variant like Dimension Kyle. Again, for this specifically, I would run a Secret Garden as the mount on that option. And for mining site, a lot of these are pretty bad, but I would recommend Mining Beacon. It's very straightforward, good mob drops. It's the one that's past the fragment here out here. Stand in place, destroy the mobs. Very easy to pick up if you're looking for a Dimension Kyle, and again, you're looking for Secret Garden. Then for the tech variant of the Kyle build, you want to run the Moongrave Basin we talked about earlier for the Ajax build. Non-attribute special rounds, again, you'll want Secret Garden in this case, and this is the tech variant as well if you're looking for those. And inside Moongrave, again, you can run almost any of these missions, but my recommendation is Water Cooling Recording Device, farming the B site. With Ultimate Freyna on the way, there's one very good reactor that's kind of best in slot for her best build as it stands right now. So there is a really good reactor for Freyna. You probably want to farm it this week as we wait for the launch of Ultimate Freyna, because it will still be useful for Ultimate Freyna, and this is for her Room 0 weapon-focused build. And that's going to be Vesper's Timberfall. It is a toxic special rounds tech reactor. Tech is where almost all of her damage scaling comes from, and in this case, you want to run a Secret Garden for insane single target damage and great synergy with her unique weapon build as well. This is for her Room 0 variant, her Neurotoxin variant build, and it's very, very strong. Now, inside of Timberfall, again, a lot of these missions are very similar in the value you get from, but personally, my recommended issue is going to be the North mission here, the Organic Recording Terminal. You have to hack the position, stand on it, and fight. The drop rate is pretty high. The density is about average. It's not crazy good, but I like this one because it's very chill, very laid back. You activate the terminal, you chill, you can drink your coffee, drink your water, whatever, hang out with your Pepsi, and then get your reactors and your drops as you move from terminal to terminal. But again, you can also run Timberfall Power Facility, or even Supply Depot is pretty decent as well. When it comes to Valby, there is one kind of, it's not her best in slot, but it's pretty good. It's a great option for Valby. So if you don't have a good farming Valby reactor, there's one that's available this week. And that's going to be here in White Knight Gulch Observatory, non-attribute impact rounds dimension. For impact rounds, you have a couple options. You can run Blue Beetle if you wanted a little bit of skill crit. Generally, Valby doesn't build as much skill crit as other characters, but it is a cool option. You can also run the new Wave of Light, which is very strong for single target, or Nizastra's Devotion. And the reason this works so well is because most of her tick damage is dimension. She has non-attribute scaling on it. And then if you ever run into a single target like a commander or a champion, someone you have to kill very quickly, you can use Nizastra's or Wave of Light, which both have exceptional single target damage. So this will be Observatory in White Knight Gulch. And again, very easy pickups here. My recommendation is going to be Order's Veil. And lastly, there are 2 reactors this week for the main man, Jayber. For all the Jayber mains that are out there holding strong for the day his ultimate comes out, there are 2 different reactors you can farm for his good builds right now. And that's going to be the non-attribute special rounds Dimension reactor from the mining site. This is primarily his assault turret build for Dimension, not the weapon build option that you can run for him, but it does have some good options there. And again, for this one inside of mining site, I'd recommend running Mining Beacon. And of course, the other option for that is going to be non-attribute impact rounds Dimension, again for his assault turret build. In this case, you can run like Wave of Light or with the Nizastra's, just like you could with Valby. And again, inside of Observatory, I would run Order's Veil as the option for that. And that covers it for the best reactors of the week. We'll be back next week to cover the next reactors that are coming here. Some good options there. And of course, in a couple weeks, we're gonna have the October 10th update as well, going over all the new content that's available there. Let us know if there's anything down below that you would like to see covered. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people. And don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.